Now let's have a look at another template that is another kind of note or instiller that the Cognitive Productivity Book deck provides. That's the concept term template. Now the most common kind of potent knowledge we encounter is a concept, which often has a handle known as a term. So if you encounter a useful concept or term and want to ensure it becomes part of your way of understanding the world and communicating about it, it's a good idea to create an instiller, such as an Anki note, for it. So let's look at an example. Daniel Dennett's a famous, notorious even, philosopher of cognitive science. In a YouTube video, he defined the term deepity. Now, deepity denotes a useful concept for rationalists and skeptics who dislike woo-woo, or this kind of talk here. So here is his definition of a deepity. So it's a proposition that has two readings and balances precariously between them. On one reading, it is true but trivial, and on another reading, it is false but would be earth-shattering if true. So that's actually a helpful concept to keep in mind when you encounter some woo-woo. And then Dennett goes on to give us an example of a deepity, which is that evolution is only a theory. Yes, it's only a theory, and that is trivially true. But if it's to have a profound meaning, in other words, if you take it as meaning that it is not a true theory, Darwin's theory of evolution, then you're stuck with something that's actually a false and misleading statement. So let's say that you want to actually carry this term in your brain. So what you can do is add a concept term here in Anki. And the term is deepity. And the definition, take from our metadoc or whatever notes you've taken. Okay. Given that we have an example here, I will actually paste the example here. Okay. This is an example, and you'll see how this plays out in the practice. Now, I'm going to also add the URL here for future reference. Okay, so we copy that, go into Anki, put in the URL in the reference field. Now, I actually have another document about this, so I will add the URL too for future reference. Okay, so we'll copy the URL of this other document and put it here. So you can do this. And then that's it. I don't have any more questions to add, so I will add this here. Now you may have noticed that Anki actually created 6 new cards, not just 2. Why is that? Let's have a look. Okay, let's study this now. So here we're asked to define a deepity, and the answer is given here with a mnemonic. No mnemonic was provided, and an example. Okay, so the example field shows up here because of the way this template's defined. Say that we know this pretty well. Because we're doing a demo and we don't want to be at the behest of Anki, we're actually going to browse this particular deck. And now let's have a look at the deepity card so I can illustrate how to search. So look at that. There's actually this collection of cards, and now we can actually preview these cards by clicking on the preview button. So here we have the preview button. So let me first select a card, preview that card. We've seen that one. Preview this one. We're given the definition and we're asked to come up with the term that means it. And then you can see the answer by clicking on this. So we can go forward to the next one here. So what do we have here? Click the preview button. So here we're asked to define the term in the context of an example. So that's actually making it a little bit easier for us. And if you don't like the particular challenge, you think it's too easy, then you can go ahead and suspend the card by clicking on the suspend button, and you can do that during practice as well. So here, this one is give an example of, okay? So let's preview that. Give an example of a deepity. Well, what is a deepity? That's a different way of assessing one's knowledge. So here you go. And you're reminded of an example, which you can then go and edit. And a different way of asking the question is, what is this an example of? So you're given an example from the example field. Notice that I didn't write the word deepity here. I actually wrote the word this because I didn't want to be cued and given the answer. If I want to practice this, then I should not give the answer away. And then we have this particular item here, define and give an example of. So this is a challenge that involves doing 2 things at once. So this is probably overkill for such a simple term. However, even if you did have so many questions for a single term or concept, you'd find that they would get spaced out pretty quickly so that you wouldn't have to be presented with them very often. What Anki does is it predicts when you're going to forget the term, and just before it predicts that you might forget it, it presents you with the card. And then the cards end up being spaced out in time.